So what's good, family? Listen, the next video we getting into, man, is the 20 weird old photographs you had to see. And look at something already crazy on the screen, all right? But before we get to the madness and the craziness, if you're new to the channel, man, hit that subscribe button, join the family, and spam that like button. Let's check this madness out.
A.L. Khan's manta ray. Some call it the devil's fish, while most people call it the manta ray because that's its official name. So, what's the nickname for? Since that's the name, we might talk about why it has such a devious name. The manta ray is a huge fish, and although it isn't as big as sharks and whales, it still holds its own weight, weighing about...
It's big enough, bro. Looking at that makes me think about that Titan submersible that went down. All right? Again, rest in peace to those gentlemen. But imagine being in a submersible and coming across something this size, fam. What can you do?
An average of 5,000 pounds and a wingspan of about 22 feet, you should get an idea of what we're driving at. This is the fish that was caught by A.L. Khan, a silk manufacturer who had gone for a fishing expedition. When we say he caught this fish, we can all agree that he didn't use a fishing rod. Luckily for him, the fish had got caught in the boat's anchor, and he called for help to even be able to kill the fish and reel it ashore. In the photograph, we see Khan standing beside the fish, giving us a scale of its sheer size. That fish put his name on the history books, as he gave it to the museum to be taxidermied after he made so much money from people who came to see it. Our man was charging as much as 10 cents in 1933, and he probably made a whole lot. Iron Man diving apparatus.
Wow.
You know how when you go on a holiday to a resort, you try underwater swimming? Most times you wear very light swimwear that allows you to be comfortable underwater. Those who go deeper get to wear oxygen tanks that allow them to breathe and stay under for a longer period. The funniest thing you'll find out is the fact that years ago, most people didn't get the chance to swim that light. Based on a picture from 1907, we see an image that looks like a suit put together by a 10th grader who was making a piece for the science fair.
We have come a long way. Look at that. Look how far we've come, bro. That joker there seems super heavy. You know what I mean? That's a lot of weight. Even in the water, that's going to be a lot of weight.
That looks like a suit put together by a 10th grader who was making a piece for the science fair. It's literally so funny because Iron Man, as the suit is called, is actually a laughable joke about what an Iron Man suit should look like. Sheesh, the Marvel guys of today would have done something better because the weight on the diver is quite crazy.
Wow.
Couldn't they design something lighter? Well, guess they had to make do with the available tech during those times. Actually, the suit was sophisticated because it has electric charging and pressure protection, but then why would they need the electric charging? For the lights? Well, if that's it, then we should be thankful for the technology of our time. Our technology would either have made the next guy on our list smarter or made us get his tricks. Colin Evans, medium. The Got Talent franchise is one of the best things to have hit our screens as it's provided us with some stunning performances, magic tricks, and laughs that could have you turning on your seat. Well, we guess Simon Cowell was in his bag when he came up with this beauty. While he was helping comics around the world get acclaim, one person would have probably made good use of his platform was Colin Evans. He may have come quite early and been an instant hit with the audience as a clown rather than a magician. In the late 1930s, our guy Colin Evans was pulling large crowds due to his seances and the claim that he could communicate with spirits who sometimes usually lifted him. Now this is hot news, and as usual, it would spread as quickly as wildfire, and more people came for his session and became believers. He was so smart that his clownery was fooling people easily, and he even made it believable by having a photograph of him taken while he was in the air. Sounds believable, but our guy made sure his sessions were in dark rooms, and oh, he was the only one who could take pictures. Well, unless he accredited the person. Anyway, he wasn't levitating.
Y'all see this scam coming from a mile away, right? Scamming in the 1930s, bro. That's crazy to me. That's sad. He's just scamming people out of their money.
But was actually jumping off his chair and being captured when he was airborne.
Wow.
Oh, and we don't think that trick should work on people today because everyone's got a camera now. Soviet cryptographer Igor Gwenzenko. After World War II, the world powers became quite suspicious of themselves and the Cold War began. So what everyone did was position themselves in a favorable position. The Soviet Union decided they needed to place spies close to their enemies strategically, and since the US was one, Canada became the next best option. So they kind of like planted spies all over the country, and people couldn't have been much the wiser. Soviet cryptographer Igor Gwenzenko decided to defect because he was tired of all the shenanigans. That comes with risks, as he could be taken out by the very people who protected him. The aftermath of his decision led to one of the most dramatic times in the Cold War, as our guy was just dropping receipts everywhere. But then, to hide his identity, he had to devise a very lazy disguise where he wore a white cloth over his face. Interestingly, the Soviets were able to finally get his house location, but then he luckily escaped, and to this day, most people don't know what he looks like.
Wow.
British forces in India camouflage their vehicles as elephants. Some images are hilarious, and you laugh and also fall off your chair. We see them a lot on social media, and we just wonder what the people in the image were thinking when the whole incident happened. Well, there are some instances where we just see the picture and we laugh, but then we just know that it's quite corny. Take a look at the picture that was taken during World War II, when British troops pulled the corniest disguise or camouflage. What were they thinking? Apparently, the official animal of India is the elephant, and it's quite revered in that climate, so you'd see them in abundance. This genius in the Royal Army decided that it was a bright idea to make camouflage that looked like elephants on their vehicles and hope that their enemies flying over the Asian country would mistake them for the actual elephant. The funny part is that it could have actually worked, because they had a whole fleet of it.
Well, when he finally broke it down and said those flying over top of him, then I was like, okay, I could see the thought process and see how this could possibly work. Because anybody on the ground just gonna look at you like you're crazy because they like, fam, what are you doing here? But I can see from people flying over top at speed, so a quick look, it looks like that. You know what I mean? So I wonder how he messed this, or how they messed this up.
Part is that it could have actually worked, because they had a whole fleet of it. If it hadn't worked, we're quite sure the Soviets and Nazis would have made a joke of the Royal Army. Anyway, the whole thing is just funny, but then we hope they're smarter in the future and don't do something that childish. Speaking of being childish, many people would have thought of the next guy in the same manner. Michelin Man. Branding is one of the most significant parts of a company's growth and reach, and as simple as it looks, it has a whole lot of parts that make it work. Just like you see in this Coca-Cola branding, and you can instantly recognize it. Well, you should know that it's evolved over the ages. One brand that's witnessed this branding growth and change is Michelin, and more especially Bibendum. If that name is strange to you, then you should know that it's the character's name for the Michelin brand. It gets wild because this character has undergone so many changes that would shock you and make you wonder what was happening on the drawing board of the Michelin creative team. Originally, the idea for the brand came when the founders saw a pile of tires and thought, hey, that looks like a tire man.
I think it's dope to see how a company starts out, because you look at it and be like, man, if you probably were around in those times, you probably looked at it and like, man, that looks crazy. That's not going to work. Now, fast forward however many decades later, you know what I mean? Or centuries, century, or however long that company's been around. Now you're like, wow, I wish that was my idea. You know what I'm saying? But people back then probably looked at it like, nah, this looks crazy. This is not gonna work.
So why not use that for our brand? The idea stuck, and since then it's just been one innovation of the whole design till they arrived at what we have now. At some point, Bibendum was black, and then they changed it to white, but it sure had some eerie looks, especially in some of the pictures from the early 1900s.
Yes, it did.
Playing tennis on the wings of an airplane. Tennis has always been a gentleman's sport because it can look so cool, especially when people sit around amphitheaters and watch players hit the balls across the court with so much vigor. Oh, it can be fun to watch, and as the players run across the courts, the most they have to deal with is the clay or hard court on which it's played. In 1925, some guys decided to take it a notch higher when they chose the craziest place to have a friendly match. These guys literally got in a biplane, got so high in the sky and
What?
then decided they were going to play a match while the plane flew. What? Isn't that ridiculous? Who even came up with the idea? And to what end was all that risk taken? Oh, and please don't mistake our use of the term guys for them being men. In fact, it was two women, Gladys Roy and Yvonne Unger, who undertook that challenge. This must have given them so much rep.
I'm like straining my eyes trying to see how are they strapped to this plane. You know what I mean? Or I don't. Yeah. I'm so confused right now. I don't even know how they did this.
Because it takes only a daredevil to even concoct such a plan. Well, they were daredevils, and the city of Los Angeles must have thought them crazy, especially since it happened in 1925 when women didn't have that many rights. Magnifying transmitter. One of the most controversial questions in the science world revolves around who's the father of the 20th century. Although there are several options, one name that stands out because of its numerous inventions is Nikola Tesla. Yeah, you probably are snickering, but then our guy deserves his flowers, and that shouldn't be taken away from him. He was just there in his laboratory cooking up some tech that would wow the world. Until today, his journals are still helping scientists. In one of the hardest pictures out there, Nikola Tesla is photographed in his lab with 22-foot-long bolts of electricity jumping around from his magnifying transmitter. How can you see this guy's inventions and think he wasn't one of the best in the game?
When I look at this photo, I like to think of that as like how his brain is just, you know what I mean? So electric. That's what I think about his brain when I see this picture. I'm like, yo, this is a perfect probably description or view or photo of how his brain is responding and acting on the inside. I don't know.
We revere his work ethic as he worked on creating a way humans could tame the electricity that's available to us in nature and develop an unending supply. However, he couldn't achieve all that before he died, but then he would forever be a real one. Alfred Hitchcock meets Leo the Lion. Nothing beats enjoying a duo that slaps so hard that you would have to go home with an aftertaste. Oh, and they come in all shades, forms, and even associations. One that slapped so hard that we couldn't keep shut about it was the link-up between two Hollywood legends. We're talking about Alfred Hitchcock, the renowned movie director, and Leo the Lion, the famous lion that captivates the sound we commonly hear when an MGM flick appears on our screen.
Wow.
As we know, no matter how much a wild animal has been tamed and conditioned, well, it can still be a wild animal, especially when it's interacting with someone who's not on his caregiver list. All that wouldn't stop the meetup between these two bigwigs in their leagues. As we see in the picture, it seems both of them had a lovely time and will forever remember that moment. In fact, Alfred should have this picture framed and hung in his home so we could have a backup for when he told his grandkids that story. But then this image just speaks class, bravado, and sheer respect for each other. Speaking of respect, if the next guys we would be looking at had respected themselves, they wouldn't have pulled this stunt. An alien mugshot, part of a 1958 hoax in Bad Axe, Michigan. The 1950s was a time that had little internet presence and the spread of hoaxes that involved aliens and UFOs. And interestingly, since there was no social media, those rumors were hard to debunk. In fact, only guys who had airtime on radio and TV stations could really reach a large audience with what they thought about these sightings. Anyway, somewhere in Michigan, a group of young men felt like they had come up with the craziest way they could fill up their boredom. These guys decided to leverage the UFO rumors and devise a prank that would seem believable. In the garage of one of these guys, they came up with the Blue Man, an alien that was blue rather than green and had a humanoid look. They strung together things like bed sheets, football helmets, and blue spray, all of which combined to terrorize the town of Bad Axe. It was so dope that people started spreading rumors about seeing a blue alien in their neighborhood. At the end of the day, they decided to end the whole charade when they undertook a crazy prank where they went to scare school kids. They later felt remorse and submitted themselves to police. Now let's get ready for today's missing topic.
Terrible. You hear me? Terrible. Bro, it's 10 times worse now these days with the hoaxes. It's hard to decipher between what's real and what's fake when it comes to stuff like this, man. But, you know, person like me, I'm going to sift through it. I'm going to figure it out. But, yeah, Those dudes is horrible for that. Really? Kids?
Topic. If you live in the United States, you shouldn't be surprised by some of the things you see or hear flying in our skies. We've heard rumors of UFO sightings, angels, and even flying superheroes. However, when it comes to this image, we're quite surprised at the whole thing, because based on what we have here, we can see a creature flying, which seems to be above a country home. The photograph also appears to be old due to the tone. It makes it seem like something that was from a long time ago. Is this an actual image? We can't say, but we lean towards the fact that it's doctored. So what do you think? Do you think it's real? We'd like to hear your opinion on the matter, and you can share that with us in the comment section using the hashtag #MissingTopic. Annie Edson Taylor. The early 1900s was a very funny time because it felt like everyone was just out there trying to do some crazy stuff. It felt like there was something in the air or water, but then at the end of the day, everyone just cheered them on. Take a look at Annie Edson Taylor.
See, they even tried to go viral back then. I mean, this was just their way of doing it. So we can't knock people too hard today of trying to go viral. They were trying to go viral back then, just in a different way.
And you'd see a woman who decided to take a wild risk that no one has ever tried. You know Niagara Falls, right? Well, at a height of 158 feet, it's like one that everyone just likes to look at from the bottom or the top. However, this school teacher just decided that she would do something wild by plummeting from the top of Niagara Falls. That's a crazy thing to do, considering she was 63 years old. Newspapers and tabloids were all trying to get her to tell them the experience. In this photograph, we see the barrel and how tall it stood compared to her, but then she couldn't have done all that successfully without the help of a harness. Old 5 megabyte hard drive.
That's the definition of a YOLO right there. She straight up YOLO.
Drive. Times are changing, and the advancement of tech is so fast-paced that people from the past 100 years would have their heads done in just thinking about what we've achieved. For instance, we now have smartphones packed with features that we need for our day-to-day. Yep. And it's all so compact that we can put them in our pockets. The sheer amount of data those things can store is staggering, but it's not really that much to today's person. Years ago, these guys were really going through it as they had a tough time storing data, but we feel it was challenging because of the access we have now. Just imagine how much space it took them to store 5 megabytes of data that would have been transmitted in the blink of an eye in today's world. Anyways, why don't y'all take a look at the 1956 IBM HDD that stores 5 megabytes of data? And you should know it weighs over a ton. And it just seems laughable because there are pictures today that are over 600 megabytes. Now imagine if the same scale was used for both of them. They would need trains and trucks to even move such a storage device. Times have changed, and those of us in the present should not snicker and forget that the future could flourish with their tech. Motorized roller skates.
We've come a long way. Think about early computers and some of that stuff, floppy disks and different things, man. We've come a long way. Storage, cloud space, all that.
One fun way to spend time with our loved ones is to go to a skating rink and let go of the built-up pressure from navigating our world. It can be quite exhilarating, and as the music plays, you'll soon find yourself grooving and getting lost in the excitement. However, this has been something that people from the past generations have tried to build and make a possibility. But not to get to the point at which we're now in roller skates, we have to understand that it's gone through many innovations. Just look at this picture and you'd be confused about what's going on because the whole setup just doesn't make sense to someone of today. What's going on is that a man is at the gas station and he's refueling his motorized roller skates.
Wow.
The design was hilarious because it came with brakes and a portable engine that powered it. Yes, those same roller skates that you move around in so swiftly at the rink with your friends. The thing is that before we got to this point, they were just coming up with different designs, and the man we see wearing it is the man who really sold the idea to Americans. Now, it's become a part of our culture. A Coca-Cola advertisement. Every brand that survived the test of time has always been one that added innovation to its product and advertisement. This is because people get bored easily. And a brand that doesn't have the spice would just disappear amongst the number of competitors available. One giant company that understands this has been great with its advertising campaigns, It's Coca-Cola, and they pulled one of the most remarkable ads in the 60s. These guys decided to let nature be their canvas, and it was an instant hit. Apparently, these guys went to the Piazza San Marco and then literally wrote a large Coca-Cola on the ground with a pigeon fodder, and then just folded their hands and watched. Well, if you have been...
Sometimes it's the simple advertisements that take you far. You know what I mean? Something just as simple as that back then. Now, could they do that today? Absolutely not. They need something way more captivating, eye-catching, and grabbing of your attention to be able to work. But this back then worked. Look at that. Just go out there, Coca-Cola. Whoever came up with that in the meeting, that dude probably was made, I don't know, he probably got a heck of a promotion. But yeah, simple back then.
Into most parks, you should know what's a common sight there. Pigeons, right? So as soon as the pigeons sighted the food, they all flocked there and helped the Coca-Cola brand create one of the sickest advertisements out there.
Pigeons, my bad. That wasn't simple, bro. My bad. That was not simple.
It even surpassed that of the guys who originally came up with the idea. On the topic of ideas, maybe more bars should do something as creative as in this next photograph. Tipsy Turks, Tipsy Trips. Have you ever wondered what happens at bars at the close of the day? Well, it's usually bustling and most times can turn up as an exciting place to be because of the drama that patrons act out when drunk. Although it can be embarrassing if you're the target of their ridicule, most times if you're not, all you need to do is sit back and relax. At some bars, you'll find bouncers who take care of these people and put them outside the premises. While a long time ago in Turkey, the bars undertook a different method to handle their drunk patrons. Instead of embarrassing their patrons by throwing them out, the Turks employed basket men to help take them home. When this image hit the internet, it caused a lot of discussion on Reddit as people tried to verify the claims of its originality.
I guess that's the definition of calling an Uber back then. Look at that. That's their Uber back then. A basket. Poor dude that's carrying a basket. Like, is the drunk... I don't see this as a negative for the drunk man. I don't. It's more negative for the dude that's carrying him on his back. I don't like the thought process behind that, no.
A lot of discussion on Reddit as people tried to verify the claims of its originality. Well, it seems it's an actual practice that was quite popular in the 1960s. Girls in the windows. Some of the most creative didn't require so much funding. They were mostly just built from the imagination of the artist. However, this doesn't mean they don't spend so much funds to create some of the beauties that we see. So what's the perfect ingredient to make this masterpiece? Let's look at the work of Orman Gigli when he took the image for the photograph Girls in the Window. You probably have seen this image but then thought it was from a movie. Well, it isn't. It's just a creative person putting together what they can come to make things work, and years later, the photograph still holds so much relevance. All our guy needed to do was get almost everything done with volunteer workers, right from the girls down to even the building. Everything was volunteered to him, and the image just slapped. According to him, he wanted to make something classic without a sponsor, and he didn't even believe it would be this iconic. Hawaiian night fishing. If we went back in time, we would see some practices that would have made us wowed, either because we didn't think of it or because it just seemed quite weird. Most times it's because we don't understand how it works, so we might just want to ask questions. For instance, this photograph shows a man carrying out Hawaiian night fishing. At first glance, you'd have wondered what was going on. But then this is a culture that's been passed on for generations. Apparently, these guys were fishing a particular species known as the rockfish, and it's always served as sustenance. This fish, which has to be caught using a 6 to 7 foot spear, has a specific process. So don't think you just go in there and just go fishing because the weird light fixture the guy has on his back is meant to lure the fish to the shallow side of the river. It's smart, right? Like, who came up with that idea and how did they know it works? It really seems like a smart idea and they deserve some applause. Dining at the Motor Mat Drive-In. If you felt like having a nice one...
What is that in... What is that in the car window?
Applause. Dining...
What is that in their car windows? You see that?
At the Motor Mat Drive-In. If you felt like having a nice on-the-go meal, the best place to get that is at a drive-thru, and you'd be out of there in no time. This has become a cultural thing in the US, and people have gotten so used to it that we forget that it's not always been in existence. Since the end of the war, the United States saw a boom in the automobile industry, and this was wild that these guys just wanted to spend so much time in their cars, from drive-in restaurants and cinemas to eateries and all. So the idea of convenience became a thing that people of the United States had embraced. When the first Motormat drive-in opened in LA, they were ready to milk it all. This new tech, which used rails to deliver food to customers in their—
Oh, so that's what it was. That was the rails to deliver you your food. So nobody was walking it out to you. They sending these little boxes to you. Okay, I get it.
cars was popping up. Maybe they didn't think about it quite well because it's as efficient as it sounds.
No tipping. Do you see that in big, bold, big? Oh man, no tipping. Wow.
These motor mats occupied a whole lot of space, as we can see in this image, and when they figured it out, it easily phased out and knew when to let a not-so-successful invention go. Lunch atop a skyscraper. We're sure that when you saw the title of this number, you probably thought it was something cute. You'd be disappointed because this is way more scarier, especially if you have someone with a fear of heights. We could have said everybody had that fear, but then we'd be wrong because we literally see some fearless men in this photograph that was taken in 1932.
All of them crazy, and you gotta have a level of trust for the next person next to you that he don't do nothing dumb to take you with him. No.
As the name implies, lunch atop a skyscraper is an image that captures workers having lunch atop a ledge on the uncompleted RCA building. Think about it. Do you think you could do this? You know, seating about 850 feet above ground level and doing all that without a harness?
No.
Now, we don't even want to imagine it, but then these guys don't even seem perturbed as they chat among themselves like it's nothing.
Yeah, that was normal for them back then. Us today? Man, please, even with a harness, you're still skeptical.
They had to have been brave guys to have even taken up such a job in the first place. Human chess Leningrad. Picture this. It's 1924 and you're in Leningrad, which is now known as St. Petersburg, and you were chanced to go past the Palace Square. Well, you would have been surprised at what you would have seen. It's not like something crazy, but then you would have seen members of the Soviet army standing in scattered forms across a field with weirdly colored square boxes. Apparently, they were chess pieces in the grand scheme of the day, and they were being controlled by two chess masters, Peter Romanovsky and Ilya Rabinov, who were playing a match. This guy was actually played to help sensitize the people of the USSR on the game of chess, and we can say it was a great move because these guys are literally one of the best in the world. Anyways, this event attracted a whole lot of people, and as we can see in the image, it seemed to have been an iconic moment. The match, however, lasted for about 5 hours, and we understand why they chose the military guys because most people wouldn't have been able to stand that long.
You try something like that today, oh my gosh, they'll try to cancel you. Oh, you can't be doing that to people, turning them into a video game. Like, you couldn't do nothing like that today in good sport or fun. You couldn't. You know what I'm saying? But listen, man, y'all can have me in the comment section and let me know what y'all thought about these videos. What do y'all thought about that old video, man? The driving and how they drove up to get food back then. It's crazy. It's insane. You know what I mean? Just looking how that was the theme of the video. How far we've come. Long ways, man. Listen, y'all get at me in the comment section. Let me know what you think and stick around and stay tuned. The next one I'm gone. Peace.